Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so grateful you are joining me and tuning into this episode. And thank you for sharing episodes that resonate with you or you think that will be helpful to someone else. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that because I'm on a mission to help as many people as possible in whatever way that is. It might be a seed that gets planted, a different way to think. So thank you for sharing this. I am so grateful for you. I hope you're having a good summer if you're listening to this during the summer. It seems to be going very quickly. It's to be going so fast. And I am just thrilled to be able to bring you today's episode. I actually got an advanced copy of her book, and it's called Wise Little One, a Prescriptive Memoir, Learning to Love and Listen to My Inner Child by Jana Wilson. And let me tell you a little bit about Jana. She is an emotional healing educator, meditation teacher, retreat leader, hypnotherapist, and founder of Emotional Healing Systems. For the past 2 decades, she has taught thousands in group and private retreats around the world. She lives off the grid in the foothills and the mountain range of Santa Fe, New Mexico, with her husband and business partner, Dr. Lance Wilson. When she's not guiding clients to heal, she enjoys hiking, playing with her rescue pups, yoga, and watching documentaries. I read this book in a day. I just devoured it. Now, if you have a lot of childhood trauma, or if you don't, it can be triggering at times because her childhood story can be really hard in particular chapters. So I want to give a warning. Some may need to take it slow if you're going to read it. It's a little heavy in terms of just reading about what she's been through, but her story is remarkable. And her healing journey and what she's done and all the self-work that she has done and then uses to facilitate healing in others. So it was a read that I felt pulled towards when I was reading it. And I felt like I could just be with her and her story and her journey. And then she's working on a second book that's going to be coming out more about the emotional healing systems. So right now, this book is #1 on Inner Child on Amazon. And I can see why, because it's all about her listening to her inner guidance, her little Jana. It's about knowing that her little Jana is wise. And that's what I work with when I'm doing client work and on this podcast is connecting to your wisdom within and really trusting that part of you, that wise part of you that knows answers to things. The answers lie within. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jana Wilson. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I'm so excited about my guest. I got a preview of her now released book. I have it in my hands and I've read it in a day. It's called Wise Little One. And Jana Wilson, welcome to the podcast. I am so glad you're here with me to dive into your book and your story with our podcast listeners.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen. It's just an honor. I'm excited.
I dove into the book. I've highlighted so much from the book. Your story is moving. It's a story that I think many people can relate to because most of us have had some sort of trauma, and that word has gotten thrown around a lot, but some sort of changes us on the inside as a result of our inner child, our childhood trauma. So I'm so glad you're here with us today. Tell the listeners a little bit about you and your story.
Okay, I would love to. So there's different types of trauma, right? As a clinician that we're now realizing, and I think we've realized probably for at least a couple decades, that trauma can occur obviously in the womb. And we know the classic example of an alcoholic mother or drug-addicted mother. She's passing everything to the baby, of course. I just had a client here, her sister, her mother was an addict. She was clean while she was pregnant with her, but when she was pregnant with her sister, she was on heroin and the baby had to withdraw from heroin. Well, in my case, my mother was clinically depressed. She was actually mentally ill. My father was beating her. So while she's pregnant with me, imagine all the cortisol that's getting pumped into my system. And I'm in a state of fight or flight, just like she is. And so I begin the story really there, right, in utero, that I was taking in all those toxic chemicals of stress. And my mother, she attempted suicide numerous times. She was never really serious, obviously. And I think when somebody's serious, they just do it, right? But it never really happened. And she even did that while she was pregnant with me. I didn't share that in the book, but she had shared that with me. In adverse childhood experiences, there's a quiz that we give people just to kind of ascertain what type of trauma did you have in childhood in your developmental years at birth to 7 years old. And I scored 10 out of 10. There's 10 questions. I score yes on every question. So I think when you get so conditioned, it's like living in I imagine people in war zones, right? Children who grow up in these types of environments. I never knew what to expect. I was hypervigilant. I disassociated a lot. The gift of the trauma, though, is what I really like to focus on, because I think if we look at trauma from just the level of, oh, I was a victim, and I certainly was. I had an alcoholic father who sexually was inappropriate with me, changing my diapers. I didn't feel safe in the world. There was only one person I felt safe around, and that was my grandmother. And maybe my big brother, who kind of protected me through it all.